Good afternoon or good morning, ladies and gentlemen, whoever you are dialing in from. My name is Raymond Ma from Marvin Kwai and Associates in Malaysia, and I'm the current president of the League of Lawyers. Thank you for joining us for the first of the League of Lawyers Asia-Europe Foreign Investment webinar series. We have two distinguished speakers today who will be speaking to you about foreign investments in Germany by Henning von Zantier and foreign investments in Thailand by Nipita Putdi-Tanakul. But before I introduce our speakers to you, let me please take a moment to introduce to you the League of Lawyers. The League of Lawyers is an international network of independent law firms across Asia and Europe. We were founded in 2012 by our 5 founding law firms with the objective of enhancing our clients' experience with each of our members. Law firm members exchange thoughts and coordinate best efforts on practice, knowledge management, and resource sharing. Today, the League serves the needs of our members and clients in 21 jurisdictions across Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. Our board is well represented with members from the UK, Thailand, Switzerland, Germany, and Malaysia. Now, the uniqueness of our network is that members develop a very close working relationship with each other so that we are able to either refer clients to each other with confidence that our clients will be well taken care of, or work together effectively on cross-border or trans-continent matters. As a network, we see ourselves as globalized lawyers with country-specific expertise. Now, today's webinar is a part of the League's drive to bring value to our members and clients in the face of the global COVID-19 pandemic. As members, we would meet in person twice a year, once in Europe in the second quarter and once in Asia in the fourth quarter. And as our law firms have transformed digitally, we, just like other businesses and businesses like yours, our attendees, the League as well is transforming, and we are proud to present to you today's webinar on foreign investments in Germany and Thailand. Let me first introduce to you our speaker from Germany, Mr. Henning von Zantier from the law firm von Zantier and Schultz. Now, Henning, following his legal studies in Germany and France, obtained his master's in law at the Tulane University in the United States in 1989, and in 1991 was admitted to the Berlin Bar, where he started working at a large international law firm. He founded the law firm von Zantier and Schultz in Berlin in 1992 with its focus on business, law, tax, and bookkeeping. In 1995, he established the first German-linked law firm in Poznan, Poland, and in 2003, he was the first member as a foreign lawyer of the Poznan Bar. He's the first non-Polish lawyer who has also been fully admitted to the chamber in Poznan. He has lectured on Polish law at the Free University of Berlin between 2004 and 2007 and focuses on corporate law, commercial law, and Polish renewable energy law. Henning was the chairman of the Polish-German Association of Legal Experts between 1993 and 1998. He was our president of the League of Lawyers in 2014 and 2020, and is now our immediate past president. He's authored a number of articles on German business law. He lectures regularly on subjects for various institutions, including the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan on UN Convention and international sales of goods. His law firm has clients from China, Japan, and India who invest in Germany or Poland, and he's been a member of Law Asia since 2006. He's a regular speaker in the M&A subcommittee between 2006 and 2015, and since 2016 is the chairman of the Asian European subcommittee within Law Asia. Next, I introduce to you our speaker from Thailand, Ms. Nipita Putdi-Tanakul from the law firm JMP Legal Co. Limited. Nipita's focus is on corporate and commercial transactions, mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, and foreign direct investment into Thailand. She also practices real estate and intellectual property law. Nipita has represented clients from various industries, including construction, real estate, manufacturing, imports and exports, property development, commercial building, IT, forestry, media, in telecommunication, infrastructure, energy as well. And to name some of her experience in foreign direct investment, which is the subject of today's webinar, we have experience in structuring and assisting a purchase of a commercial building in Bangkok, representing a Malaysian company on structuring and preparing a JV with a Thai company in a hotel project, the acquisition of 70% of a stake in a financial technology company in Thailand, acting for real estate Japanese group in the acquisition of a stake in a logistics company in Thailand, to name a few. Nipita is also our secretary for the League of Lawyers starting from this term. Now, I will invite each speaker to have the floor for about 20 minutes, after which we will have a question and answer session. So please feel free as the audience to type your questions into the Zoom chat box as we go, so you don't forget your questions, and then we will take your questions together at the end. Over to you, Henning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raymond, Mr. President, for this very kind introduction. And I'm very honored to be one of the two speakers who inaugurate this session on foreign investment in several jurisdictions of law firms who are members of the League of Lawyers. Since Raymond was so nice to introduce myself, I will straight go to the subject matter and will now present the slides. Do you see the slides? I hope you do.
Not yet, Henning.
Not yet, okay. Now?
Yes, there we go.
Great, excellent, thank you. Sorry for the delay. Yes, so I will skip the introduction since Raymond did this. Thank you very much. What I will be talking about, there are 9 topics. First, some economic aspects of Germany. Then, is there a foreign investment law? Restriction on foreign investment, real estate in Germany. What type of investments do we have in Germany? Example of financial support, which might be very interesting for you. How to get a work visa, and then money exchange control, which there are almost none. And then finally, some tips for foreign investors. So let's start with some aspects of Germany. I suppose most of you know some aspects of Germany. It's the biggest economy in the EU with 83 million inhabitants. It's also population-wise the biggest country in the EU. And then there are some important memberships. We feel ourselves members of the West. UN is the global, but NATO also. EU is being the most important membership in the World Health Organization and the World Trade Organization. What is interesting for investors who come maybe from Asia to Germany, we are strong in automotive. The car was invented here in Germany, and we have a Mercedes, we have Volkswagen, we have BMW, for example. Construction is strong here, chemical industry, electrical industry, power generation, mechanical engineering, shipyards, and also renewable energy are strong branches in Germany. And we have probably the only global player in IT with this SAP from the EU. So we have, and being Berlin besides London, one of the major investment points for starts up in the IT industry, with around 2 or 3 billion investment per year. So there's also IT going on here. Investment in Germany is about 540 billion euros cumulative in 2018. And Germany is here the 22nd largest destination for investment. German investment abroad is much bigger. It's 4 times as much, 2.2 trillion euros. And here, Germany is number 5 in the world. GDP is almost 4 trillion euros. And this has been pretty stable since 2018, because we had in 2020 a decrease, a shrinking economy. So it more or less stayed the same. And for next year, we are hoping to have growth. This year, 2021, we're looking forward for growth, and the estimates is between 3 and 4%. Inflation is pretty low, so I don't have to go into the details. And what is always important for investors is to know that the export is quite high, so it's a third of the GDP. And this is why Germany wants to be itself a free market economy, because also the export is very high. Okay, so there are some data on Germany. What is foreign investment laws? As I said, we are a free market economy, and we don't have a general foreign investment law in the sense that it covers all companies, but only Trade and Payment Act, where certain branches are exempted or at least subject to permissions like military equipment, but the list is very short. And the same is true recently also upon an EU regulation actually for investment. So this maybe also is an interesting aspect that the EU is getting a little bit more protectionist. I will come to this later, whereas I understand that developing countries like especially in East Asia, Asia, like Bangladesh, I think also Thailand, opening up, coming from a more restricted standard earlier. Yes. The national, where you have to take care whether the trade is somehow restricted, as I said, in very few areas, you better ask a lawyer. You can also go directly to the Federal Ministry of Economics and Technology, but it's a little bit tricky. So we advise you to have it checked if you think you could have sensitive goods or your investment could be sensitive. The last point, the German Trade and Investment, GTAI, which is a very nice agency. They mostly give you first front information for free. They have a website also where you get a lot of information which are already published. So this is an interesting point to get information. Also actually for German companies going abroad, but the same is true for you investing or having trade with Germany. So I come now to the restriction on foreign investment. As I said, in most cases, foreign investors can acquire shares in German companies without restriction, but we have since 2019 a regulation, that it means act of the EU, which is directly applicable in all EU countries. And there we have two criteria which you should know. If you have if you want to buy 25% of the voting rights in a domestic company, it might be scrutinized. And if you want to buy 10% of voting rights in a company that belongs to a particular security relevant sector, then you might be subject to control and to screening, as they say. But screening is a nice way to put it. If you conclude a contract on buying 10% or the 25% or more, then this would be invalid if it would be needed permission, and the permission is not asked for. And it's the investor who is responsible to ask for the permission. There are very few cases where permission was not granted. It's below 10 for the last year. So generally, this is for Germany. It's not a problem, but the screening in itself is crucial for you being the investor. Yes. Also, recently, critical infrastructure, and actually last year, then even health issues became part of critical infrastructure because of the pandemic. Other than that, it's normally energy, where then the screening procedure will be triggered. So I come now to special branches in Germany. You can buy as an investor real estate. There's no legal restriction on that. What is a little bit different is the real estate law. Will not be owner of a real estate in Germany once you sign the contract, but once you are registered in the public register. So this is different than, I think, in the Anglo-Saxon world. Yes, and we think that makes it safer. It makes it also a little bit more complicated, probably. The annual prices do increase right now. Germany is in compared to other EU countries like France, Northern Italy, or in former times England, or at least London. The prices are lower for most of, you can say this in general, which is a very general statement. So the prices here increase in real estate, and many think it's because of the increase it's interesting to invest here. So what is the type of investment? That means in terms of the corporate structure. We have the GmbH, which is a limited company, where you have to have a minimum share capital of 25,000 euros. And then we have a corporate stock corporation, which is called Aktiengesellschaft or AG, where you have to have 50,000 euros as share capital. And then recently, because we saw that the British do that, we thought we also should have a company which has a very low share capital, which is the UG, which is called Unternehmergesellschaft, where you have a share capital of only €1. Altogether, we have a little more than 1 million capital companies in Germany. So there's a lot of variety if you want to invest. If you have, there's much more to say, of course, about corporate law than I do in this 2 minutes. If you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer them later. So what it might be interesting and might be quite not unique but rare is that there is a lot of financial support if you invest in Germany. At least there are a lot of options to receive financial support. This is the KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. So there's in Germany for 2020 there was a support of more than 100 billion euros. This is a governmental measure to support certain branches like renewable energy, like certain infrastructure and so on. So there is no general claim for getting support if you enter Germany, but only if you meet certain requirements. But the number is quite high. And besides, the KfW is a nationwide, is on the federal level. We have also on the state level support. And there we have, e.g. for Berlin, it's 1.6 billion euros per year. So if you are in certain branches, you might get support, financial support. So a work visa in Germany has been quite restricted. In former times, it had been opened up within the EU. There's a blue card. And then it is also more open for the ICT sector. If you want to go to Germany, you first need a visa or a residence title. Let's put it like this. This could be a visa, this could be a residence permit, or it could be a settlement permit. The visa you have to apply in your own country in a German mission. And then they will check not only whether or not you are entitled to get a residence title, that means that you can stay in Germany, but they will also ask the labor agency, which I put under H2, work permit, whether your employee is entitled to get a work permit. And the test generally is you may employ an employee from your company or another company in a German company or a German company that you will be founding. If this person has a special skill and it doesn't interfere in the work market in Germany. So there is no actual competition in Germany of another employee who would then be able to take this job, to put a long story short. Then, as I said, there's a certain advantage for the ICT branch. So you can here get it easier, a work permit, if you have an employee who should be employed in the ICT area. Money exchange control, there is no formal money exchange controls, both borrowing and lending abroad is possible. The only exception is for money laundering. So if you have 2,000 euros in coins and 10,000 euros on the bank account, you have to tell the bank, or other than that, yes, you have to tell the bank about this, and they might or they will check whether or not there is money laundering involved, and this is rather an indication you have to do than a permission. Foreign funding is facilitated by the full convertibility of the euro and freely accessible foreign exchange market. There's an obligation to report to the regional branch of the Bundesbank, which is the state federal bank, for statistical purposes. So what tips are for foreign investors? Good preparation in economic, financial, legal, and tax planning. Legal here is, in addition, for the last 2 years, is whether or not you need a permit, and there you should involve experts for the financial questions, but for the legal and tax planning, we are happy to help you. What in generally also location plays a major role when it comes to applying for funding. So we have state banks on the state level, Bundesland level, which have more or less money or have different criteria. So this might be interesting. And also the question for qualified employees. So like, for example, Tesla, as you may know, invested its gigafactory outside of Berlin. And one major reason was because the university standards in Berlin is very good. And so also a lot of people, there's a lot of workforce. So they will first employ like 16,000 people, which is planned for this year, and will then possibly employ in the end 40,000 people. So there, it might also be that you like to look for the area. Other than that, of course, if you want to invest in or want to buy shares of a certain factory, you are fixed and have to go with the location of this very factory. So there's little place for options there. Well, this is all for now. I mean, it's a very, very short overview, and I probably rather invoke questions on your sides than that I could answer things. But anyway, there is a lot to say, and I hope I could give you an overview. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Henning, for your sharing on foreign investment in Germany. Can I now invite Nipita to take control of the screen and tell us a bit about Thailand? Okay, that's great. Over to you, Nipita. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I don't see any ladies here yet, but good afternoon or good morning. It is an honor to be a speaker today as well, although it is not always good to follow Henning. Well, thank you for joining us today at our seminar organized by the League of Lawyers. As Raymond has kindly introduced me in the beginning, thank you, Raymond. My name is Nipita Paktithanakul. I am the Managing Director of JNP Legal Thailand. I've been working as a legal advisor specifically in foreign direct investment and M&As in Thailand for over 15 years. Our firm, JNP Legal, has been in operation for over 10 years and serves clients in various other areas of law in Thailand as well. Now, without further ado, I would like to kick off my presentation with a brief, can you see my screen? So I would like to kick off my presentation with a brief overview of the restrictions of foreign investment in Thailand. A little bit of the stats for Thailand. We have roughly about almost 70 million in population. We have 38.2 million labor force. Employment is about 37.3 million and only 1% unemployment rate. Our GDP is in 2019, because the last 2 years doesn't count, is 530 billion US dollars only. Inflation rate is minus 1.6% again in 2020. And minimum wage in 2020 is about 10.5 US dollars a day. For those who don't know Thailand, Thailand is logistically located in the center of ASEAN region. We are quite attractive for many foreign investors who are looking to establish regional presence or hub in ASEAN. We have growing economy. Thailand's M&A is still in the developing stages, meaning that there is a potential room for growth. We have a decent level of government support and sufficient infrastructure and decent level of social and political stability. Now, let's look at some regulatory obstacles for foreign direct investment in Thailand. Generally, the law that governs the foreign direct investment restrictions in Thailand is called Foreign Business Act 1999. The act restricts operation of most business in Thailand operated by foreigner. And by foreigner, we mean from any country. We do not discriminate. The act basically controls two things. The first thing is the percentage of shareholding, foreign shareholding. And the second thing that the Act controls is the type of businesses that the foreigner will be doing. A limited company is probably the most common type of entity that foreign investors would choose to establish in Thailand. If there are more than 49% of foreign-owned shares in the company will be considered a foreign entity, and it will be subjected to the foreign direct investment restrictions. So what are the restrictions? So the restrictions are that they will be prohibited from operating many activities. There will be a long list of activities. And this is a criminal offense, so with criminal fine and imprisonment. So it is quite a big deal. And this is why many foreign companies in Thailand opt for the options of having 49% foreign shareholding and 51% Thai shareholding to avoid the restrictions. The main government authority who has responsibilities to oversee foreign investment in Thailand is the Ministry of Commerce. And this is for general businesses. For certain businesses, additional license from different ministry and heavier restrictions on percentage of Thai shareholding may be applicable. Just to give you an example, to prevent and reduce the human trafficking crimes, the government has imposed a heavier restrictions on the overseas employment recruitment business because it's exposed to many human trafficking cases. So the government imposed 75% Thai shareholding restrictions and additional license. And by having a license, you have to put in some guarantee money to the government as well. As for the restricted types of business, there are 3 lists of restricted activities under the Foreign Business Act. The 3 lists are basically more or less an impossible list, possible but difficult, and possible list. So altogether, there are 43 restricted activities that foreign companies or foreigner cannot operate unless approval is granted. In terms of directorship, there is no restriction. Foreigner can be a director in a company. There is also no restrictions on the minimum registered capital. However, in the case that the company is supporting a work permit or is under conditions of the Board of Investment or treaty, there will be minimum registered capital, but the amount will depend on each situation. Let's have a look at the land ownership. It is not possible for foreigner to own land unless permission from the Board of Investment Authority or Industrial Estate Authority of Thailand is granted. However, foreigner can own condominium, but the foreign own ratio in that particular condominium must not be more than 49% of the total registered unit in that condo. So again, the 49-51% ratio applied. To enter into a country, business visa will be required. At the moment, it's quite difficult to get a business visa because you need to seek additional steps to seek permission from the Thai embassy in that particular country before you can get a visa. Work permit will also be required for foreigner to work in Thailand. To sponsor a work permit, the company that will be hiring that individual will have to have minimum 2 million baht paid up registered capital for one work permit. And the company will also have to hire 4 Thai staffs to support one foreign work permit. So it's basically making sure that the company employs local people as well. In terms of funding, bringing money into Thailand, there is no restrictions. You just have to declare to the customs if you're carrying in cash more than 15,000 US dollars. For carrying out cash from Thailand, however, to other countries, there's a maximum limit of 1,700 US dollars. But if you're carrying in cash to the country that share borders with Thailand, the maximum amount of cash that you can carry out would be 67,000 US dollars. Official language is Thai only. The Thai government authority would not consider any documentation or information in any other languages except from the Board of Investment Authority, who speaks several languages and accepts documents in English. In terms of tax, the corporate income tax rate in Thailand is 20% on net profit. However, for small and medium-sized business, the first 300,000 Thai baht profit is not taxed. Anything above 300,000 to 3 million Thai baht is taxed at the rate of 15%. And anything above 3 million Thai baht is taxed at 20%. There will also be a value-added tax of 7% on all goods and services. Let's have a look at the wage. The current minimum wage, as I mentioned before, for Thai national workers in Bangkok is $10.5 a day only. Minimum wage for foreign workers is based on nationalities. So it ranges from 30,000 to 50,000 Thai baht per month, or roughly around 1,000 to 1,700 US dollars per month. This minimum wage would have to be paid out if the foreigner is under a work permit, and it's a requirement. The government will be checking that the money has been paid out. There are exemptions. The Thai government provides incentives to foreign investors in a form of specific approvals, and these approvals grants exemption to the foreign direct investment restrictions, and grant both tax and non-tax privileges to the investor. For example, some tax exemption, tax reduction, the easier work permit application process, or import-export duty reduction, or sometimes in certain cases, land ownership or 100% foreign shareholding, depending on the type of activities and the project that you will be investing. In the event that the foreigner would like to have more than 50% of shares in a company, the company will need to seek special approval from the government in order to gain exemption. The exemption will only be granted if such foreigner are qualified, and the qualification can be two things, can be nationality-based or business activities-based. At present, there is only one nationality-based qualification, and this is under a treaty between Thailand and United States called Treaty of Amity. And the treaty grants special rights only for American nationals to seek exemption to foreign investment restrictions to be able to operate business in Thailand like a Thai national. There are a few cases where the foreign investor would go and form a company in America and call themselves American nationals. That would not fall under these categories because they would check, the government would check the shareholdings line until the end to see if they're actually American. As for the business activities-based qualification, a list of qualified business activities has been issued by the Board of Investment Authority. Companies can consider the categories that they would fall under and apply for the category that would be viable for them. Besides from that, Thailand also has many free trade zones that attract foreign investors, mostly for investors who are in manufacturing industries. The free trade zones are available in specific areas throughout Thailand, and foreign investors who have their business in these zones usually receive privileges from the government. Now, those were exemptions, but however, the process of obtaining such approval may take up to 3 months, and the exemption of foreign business investment can be costly and time-consuming, and only a small percentage of foreign investors are willing to go through the process to achieve exemptions to the foreign business restrictions. Those who obtain approvals from the Board of Investment Authority also have an ongoing obligation to report to several authorities. So it's not just a one-go approval. You need to maintain your status. You need to be able to qualify throughout the process. So as a result, and in phases, Thailand over the past 30 years has been opening its door to foreign investors by providing incentives, entering into reciprocal treaties, and overall providing the necessary infrastructure for a successful business experience for the investor. Recently, however, we've seen a further reduction of restrictions on particular types of businesses that are not subject to the general restrictions of foreign business investment. From 2013 to 2019, we saw that the government has substantially eased restrictions placed on foreign investment. And this has been issued in the form of ministerial regulation that prescribe list of businesses that are not subject to foreign direct investment restrictions. And from those lists, we can categorize them in 4 categories. The first category is financial sectors. So this includes banks, insurance companies, asset management companies. The second category would be representative offices and national rep offices of international trade businesses. And the third category would be service businesses that foreign entities will be providing to Thai government bodies or state enterprises. And recently in 2019, a fourth category would be a business of lending money, leasing office space, providing consultation and advice in management administration, marketing, human resource, information technology to affiliate companies in Thailand. As you can see, Thailand's policy has become more and more welcoming to foreign investment. And over the past years, everything seemed a lot easier in terms of foreign direct investment. I've seen a lot of acquisitions of banks and insurance companies, which would not be possible before. And then, COVID-19 has hit. So right now, a lot of businesses, especially in the tourism industry, are suffering. And I do hope that the investment climate will soon pick right back up where it was before COVID-19, but I believe it will take some time for the market to readjust. At the moment, the government has a plan to reopen the country from October this year. From April to September, arrivals without a vaccination certificate and COVID-19 free certificate would be quarantined for only 10 days and be tested for the disease twice. The 14-day quarantine period would remain in places for arrivals from countries where the COVID-19 virus has mutated. From April this year to June, people in quarantine will be allowed to exercise in fitness rooms and outdoor, and they can swim or cycle in closed areas and buy food from outside. And the plan is from October onwards, the quarantine process would not be required under the condition that in that particular area, over 70% of health workers in that area have been vaccinated, and people who are likely to be in contact with at-risk people have received the vaccine. So from October onwards, inbound travelers, investors, are required to have only documentation of their COVID-19 negative status with them. There is no details on what type of vaccine that is, but yeah, so this is a general timeline. This is the end of my presentation. I know that there's a lot of details that I didn't explain, and I hope it at least gives them some insight on what's going on in Thailand in terms of foreign direct investment, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nipita. All right, we are going to go into question and answers. Would anybody like to start by turning on their audio and asking a question before I turn to the questions asked in the chat? If not, I will look at the questions in the chat, and we have a question from Nitin, which is directed at Henning. Henning, can you tell us which countries are the largest investors in Germany?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. The largest is the United States. It was once China, but China is number 4 right now, so the largest is the United States. Second is UK, and then third is Switzerland. So we are happy to keep ties with the UK, even though they left the EU. This is the status right now, but it's tight. It's not that clear that United States is beating everybody. But as I said, it was China for a certain time. In trade, not in investment. Sorry, in trade.
Nipita, May Lam has asked a similar question in respect of Thailand, which are the largest investors in Thailand?
Sure. The last time I actually checked is in 2019. That was Japan, who invests about 60% of the total foreign investor in Thailand. The stats just now says Japan and Singapore, and I believe China is up there as well at the moment.
Where is the US, given that you seem to have very favorable conditions for American investors?
They're not, well, they're probably on the list, but they're not the top 3.
Not at the top. Okay. There is a question for Nipita. Even though foreign investors still invest heavily in manufacturing in Thailand, is there a growing trend towards any other sectors in your country?
The trends would be IT, I think. There's a lot throughout this COVID thing, IT business in Thailand survived pretty well. And I guess from my experience as well, I've seen a lot of acquisitions in that area. Other area that I personally dealt with is in the cryptocurrency side. Thailand started to regulate cryptocurrency businesses, and that there are a lot of operators applying for licenses.
Thanks, Nipita. Any other questions from our attendees? If you don't feel like typing, feel free to turn on your video or your microphone to ask your questions.
I have one question on the COVID barriers, which right now Thailand has. Do I understand well that only people who are vaccinated can right now go from April to October, to September to China to Thailand, and then have to stay in quarantine, or is this sufficient to be
so
eligible?
There are phases. From April to September, if you have a certificate saying that you don't have the disease, then you'll be quarantined for 10 days, unless you're from South Africa or somewhere that the COVID has mutated. Then you still have to do 14 days quarantine. But if you don't, then 10 days quarantine, and then you have to test. They will test you twice. And from October onwards, basically you just have to say that you vaccinated, and then you don't have to quarantine yourself, just come in. There's also a talk about using Phuket, which is an island, sorry, not an island, a town, as a quarantine town. So the whole town would be a place where traveler will go in and quarantine themselves there for 2 weeks. I don't know how it's going to work, but yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Sounds quite attractive, isn't it, to quarantine kids?
Except for the virus, I would say, if there are too many people, not a nice company. Yeah.
Well, we've heard from Nipita a little bit about FDI in the COVID context. What about Germany, Henning? Would you be able to share with us how Germany is handling the COVID pandemic, and how you see that might have an impact on FDI in the next year or two?
Yes, a very good point. Actually, I'm writing right now an article for LOL and also Law Asia, comparing East Asia and Europe in terms of the impact of COVID. And it's not only that we have much more killed cases. So in Germany, we have, for example, 80,000 people who were killed by COVID. Whereas, for example, in Taiwan, you have 12 people killed. Or in Vietnam, you have 35 people killed. And the largest rate of killings is in Japan out of East Asia, that is 9,000. And the largest number in Europe is, accounting UK still as a part of Europe, is about 130, a little bit less, 130,000. So it's just, in Japan is much bigger, is double as big as in population wise than UK. So we have a rate of 10 times, at least 10, 20, sometimes 30 times more killed per capita or per million capita than in East Asia. This is a very important figure. And also in terms of investments, actually, there were, as you may know, the EU has built a fund from the EU amounting to 750 billion euros, helping these countries. It's not only like wasted money in the sense it's for consumption, but it's also for investment, and to a large extent, actually. But it seems that also there we are, to call it number, we have spent at least 10 times as much per million capita than East Asia. And at least in Germany, not many people speak about, the media do not speak about the success of East Asia there. And I think this is changing the economics to a large extent, because there have been growth. Like Taiwan had growth of 3.2%, then Vietnam had 2 point something, and China also. Not the rest actually there. But the shrinking in Europe is between 4 and 11% shrinking rates. And I think the biggest shrinking is in Malaysia, if I may say so, out of the East Asian countries, which I have screened is like 5% something in 2020. So we all expect growth, but this tells a lot in general terms. And why is this? This is a big question. It's difficult to say. It seems the Taiwan way is very quick and very vigorous action and eliminate the virus. In Europe, nobody aims in eliminating, it's just mitigating. And if you mitigate, you always have the risk that it can then increase immediately. So if we did not have the vaccine, we would have this lockdown thing. Lockdown is extremely expensive, it's extremely inefficient, and it's extremely destructive to economics to certain branches. It's almost zero, like restaurants and so on. And so it's a much better way, as several, if not the most or all East Asian countries, where they were aiming in eliminating the virus. And this was never an aim here. We don't like to, and this is a legal problem, I think, and a mentality problem maybe. So we like to have the data protection, which in generally, I completely agree. It's a very good thing, but not when it comes to a pandemic. So then we have to ponder life against data protection. And I can't really explain why people don't stress more on life here, having 700,000 killed in Europe. So it's not just a car accident or whatever, but it's just, it's a pandemic. So I think one reason is, as I have a friend from Taiwan and we were talking about that, is East Asia is more used to pandemics. SARS, COVID-1 had been much more present in most of East Asian countries, so people were more prepared. And also there are earthquakes, so there are disasters, natural disasters, which have been much more common in East Asia than probably in Europe.
More adaptable, perhaps.
More adaptable. Maybe it's also that we have more the mentality not to keep cool and not to be too hot on certain issues, not to be whatever you may call that, to be too engaged, but we have the money to fight against any burden. And this we can afford maybe this time, but the next time we have a pandemic, this will really change everything. So hopefully we have learned.
I have some comments to that. So in Thailand, if you are affected, the government would expose your timeline 2 weeks backwards and in details, because you're supposed to be scanning every place you go into. So a lot of people would avoid catching the disease because they are afraid that they will get exposed of their timeline. So that their wives and family would not know where they're going. So that might work, the fear.
It seems, yeah. How would they get the data?
Before you enter into any place, you need to check in to that place, and they will know that you are, that's your information.
So everybody has to have a smartphone, and then
there's an app. Yeah, there's an app.
Yeah. Okay.
And that becomes public knowledge. How interesting.
Right.
All right, well, we've just touched 60 minutes, and that was our goal, to keep this short and sweet. But perhaps before we close, can I ask everyone to turn on their video so that we can take a group picture, one photo for the album. Thank you. Okay, I will just end with an announcement. I'd like to welcome you all to our next webinar in the series. I'll just share my screen so that you can see that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Foreign investment in Malaysia and Switzerland. This session will be on the 27th of May and will be moderated by the League's Vice President, Nitin Chauhan from the UK. Now, at our next webinar, we will also be launching our ebook on foreign investments. And this will be a publication that has been contributed to by our members. And it will feature question and answers and the Q&A, simple to read and understand format from a number of jurisdictions from across Asia and Europe. So we're very excited about that. Now, in the chat box, there will be a link. Stella, if you could please post the link for a feedback form on this session, and we would love to hear from you. And it will only take you a minute or so, so please let us have your feedback. We would appreciate that. Finally, we're always on the lookout for new partners in jurisdictions where we don't already have a member outside the 21 members that we have. So if any of our guests today, you know of law firms, or you have worked with law firms that you've worked well with and you might think might benefit from our network, please do reach out to us and then let us know. So that's all from me, short and sweet. And finally, a big thank you to our speakers, Henning and Nipita, for your time and all the information that you have shared, and to all our attendees today. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you next month. Bye-bye now. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.